and welcome back to Franklin Covey's twice weekly podcast on leadership with Scott Miller. I am your host, 6 years running, 500 episodes taped, and about 450 released, where every Tuesday and Friday we release, both in video and audio formats, conversations with carefully curated guests, entrepreneurs, intrapreneurs, solopreneurs, CEOs, thought leaders, creators, artists, people that have actually experienced perhaps something traumatic, and they've lived to not just share about it, but teach through it. This is a leadership podcast sponsored by the FranklinCovey Company. Of course, we are the most trusted leadership firm in the world, originally inspired and founded in part by Stephen Covey, the author of the seminal book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And on some rare occasions, we invite a creator, an author, back onto the podcast because they've dedicated a year or 2 or 4, in some cases of their lives, to introspection and thinking and research. And today I'm honored to invite Rachel Hollis back to the podcast. Rachel and I have been friends for the better part of 5 or 6 years, and she's had a very public journey as an artist, a creator, a mother, an entrepreneur, a spouse, a live event phenom, and has had a lot of twists and turns and ups and downs since her last appearance here. And her new book is releasing today, January 7th, and I'm honored to have her back to talk about what if you are the answer. Rachel Hollis, welcome back.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me, Scott.
It is great to see you again. To say you've had a couple of highs and lows since we talked last is an understatement. You write about them very vulnerably in this new book. In fact, just this past month, I was meeting with your publisher in New York on a separate topic, and she mentioned this is Rachel's best book ever. Well, of course, your current publisher would say that. She's very credible, and since reading the book, I concur. Pre-sales of this book have been nothing less than astronomical. You deserve it. People will devour it. Before we get into the book, Rachel, would you rewind a couple of decades? Because you have a long, hard-fought journey as an entrepreneur, as an author, as a keynote speaker, as a thought leader. Would you rewind and reorient your journey in California and how that happened? Because there were some very interesting pivots in terms of how you moved from events and catering to sort of a lifestyle curator, if you will, to an influencer and an author. Don't shortchange the audience, because there are some people here, believe it or not, who may not know who you are. And I'd like for you to maybe belabor a bit what the journey is, because there are so many lessons in that. I may choose to tease a few out, and we'll dive into the book.
Yeah, I think if anything, my journey has been an evolution more than a straight line from one point to the next. As you mentioned, my first company was an event planner here in Los Angeles, and I would do weddings and bar mitzvahs, and that sort of evolved into getting to do corporate events and working with entertainment industry clients, and sort of got bigger and bigger. And in about probably 2008, I kept hearing about this thing called a blog, and everyone was doing a blog, and I didn't really know what that was, but I'm pretty interested in what the newest ways of doing things are. So I decided I would start a blog, and I wrote about entertaining at home, because that's what I was doing for other people, was helping them to throw these big life events. And the blog slowly but surely started to take off, where I was able to begin to hire other editors, writers, photographers to help me build out this website. And slowly but surely, that lifestyle website, that lifestyle blog, became a much bigger business than my event planning business was. And it was fabulous, because I didn't have to deal with any bridezillas. I was able to just talk about beautiful tablescapes and my favorite recipes and how I was getting my baby to sleep through the night for the first time. So it was this really cool, very organic, just trying to figure out, a way to make a living doing something that I thought was really fun and good. And, we weren't curing any diseases or making billions of dollars, but we were doing work that we were really proud of. And in that process, I began to have this communication with an audience. It started as a very small group of people who read the site. And it kept growing and growing, and people would tell their friends, and one thing led to another, to the point that we were publishing editorial 5 days a week. And most of that was written by me. So I was writing constantly. And I think if you're someone who is writing every day for your job, and you're a book nerd like I am, have always been and always will be, and you've always sort of had this idea that maybe you could write books, that you start to think it's possible. You're writing every day for your job, and you're thinking, oh, maybe I could write a book. So in 2013, I started writing for real. And I say for real because, like most authors, I had written, 40 books that I never finished. I kept starting and stopping over and over. And eventually I got to this place where I thought, okay, all I need to do to be an author is to just finish a manuscript. So I worked really hard, 2013, finished the manuscript, and nobody wanted it. Nobody, no publisher, nobody wanted that book. And I was so devastated. And I have told the story many times of sort of sliding down the wall in my bathroom and sitting on the floor and having a good long cry, because I thought my dream of being an author was over. And then I heard this voice, which I believe was God, inner wisdom, inner knowing, that just said, well, you did the hard part. You already did the hardest part. You wrote the book. So what a shame it would be to have written this book and nothing happens with it. I got up off the floor, I went to my kitchen, and I Googled, how do you self-publish a book? And in February of 2014, I released my first book. And I was so proud, Scott. I was so proud to have that book out in the world. And I think 3 people read it. They were readers of the blog, and so they very kindly bought a copy. And slowly but surely, same as with the website, one person would tell another, who would tell another, who would tell another. And the book started to become bigger and bigger and bigger. And 6 months later, I got a call from an imprint at Amazon who could see my sales. And they said, hey, we see what this book's doing. We think that we could help you. And we think that this book is a series, which I had never in my life thought would be the case. So then I began this career where I was writing these fiction books, and I was working on my website, again, just continuing to evolve and grow and try and get better. And as fate would have it, many books later, my 6th book later, the book exploded. And that book was Girl Wash Your Face. And it was a rocket ship. I've been asked so many times how that happened, and the honest truth is I do not know. Luck or divine timing or just some sort of magic that made that what it is. But it has made it so that I am able to be an author full time, and I have a podcast, and that was a very condensed version of a 20-year entrepreneurial journey, but that is where I am today.
I appreciate you taking the time. I'm going to unpack one lesson there, and then we're going to dive into your 10th book that is going to sweep the world by storm. So get ready for that. Like you, I know a few things about books. I know nothing about movies or AI, but I know a few things about books, and I can tell all the listeners this is a book you're going to want to buy and form a book club around. The fact is, it was your 6th book that really put you on the map. In fact, if I'm not mistaken, in 2018 or something, you were one of the top selling authors in the US, second only to a couple of authors, including, I think, the then First Lady.
Yes.
But there is a lesson in here for dreamers, for people with a vision of something. You actually wrote and published 5 books before many people knew who you were, and then there was an inflection point. Tease out that lesson for anybody right now who is literally or metaphorically sliding down their bathroom wall. Breathe fire into a few million people.
Yes. Oh my gosh. I think the biggest lesson in this for me is that I fell in love with the process. I cannot stress this enough. In fact, there is a chapter I talk about this in the book, this idea of what would you do even if you knew you would fail? The famous quote is, what would you do if you knew you could not fail? And Seth Godin has this fabulous question that I absolutely stole from him, which is, well, what would you do if you knew you could not succeed? What do you love so much that even if you were never successful in the eyes of the world, you would do it anyway? What are you passionate about that is so important to you that it doesn't matter if anyone else knows that it exists? That's the thing to pour gasoline on. That's the thing to put your heart and soul into. And if I have a lesson for anybody, or that I could go back and realize what a younger version of me was doing, I was just so pumped that I got to write books. I love books. They're my favorite thing in the world. I would not be the human being that I am if it wasn't for the incredible teachers, many of whom you've had on the show, and good grief, the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Like, who would we all be without that book? I was so grateful for the place that books have played in my life that I couldn't believe I got to create one. So I honestly hoped that someday I might make enough of an impact that other people knew that I was writing. But in the short term, it was just about the opportunity to write. So if you can fall in love with the process, focus on that journey, I swear to you that doors open up and things happen and the universe rises up to meet you, because you are generating from a place of super high vibration. You're excited about what you're doing. Your heart's involved, and it's not about worldly success. I firmly believe that when you don't chase worldly success, it somehow magically shows up. But if you are not in love with the process of doing the thing you're trying to do, if you're not in love with the process of becoming a better leader, if you're not in love with the process of trying to figure out the puzzle pieces to take your business to the next revenue level, like if you're not in love with that process, you are going to burn out so fast, because every single journey is long. So you have got to be enjoying the road as you travel down it, or you're never going to make it to the finish line.
At your core, you're a teacher. Maybe you do, but I don't know why you don't have a master class or a series of masterminds, because you are a teacher. I mean, I've had a 30-year executive corporate career, and I saw you on stage in Charleston at one of your Rise business events teaching 7,000 people how to read a P&L, how to calculate gross margin, what cost of goods were, the difference between net and gross revenue. You were teaching chiropractors and florists and massage therapists and architects and accountants. You were teaching people the principles of entrepreneurialism. I've also seen you teach people, including me, about the power of what Seth, our friend, says is your smallest viable market. You are an expert at understanding who your customer is, who your reader is, what is her name. You named her. You had an avatar.
Yes.
And
Yeah,
you
her
could
name's
teach a master
Jennifer.
class. What was her name?
Jennifer.
And I sat in your office, and I think it was Austin, Texas, like at the feet of greatness, listening to you talk about who your client was. And similarly, in your new book, you teach a lot of amazing questions. Unlike perhaps some of your previous books where you're sharing your insights, your own, maybe even prescription around what worked for you, which may or may not have worked for others, you kind of flip the script on this one and say, hey, instead of teaching you, I'm just going to pose great questions to you and have you uncover, peel the onion, and ask yourself. But you do say one line in the book that is absolutely my favorite. I'm going to quote you on it. You say, what I've learned is that I am one life experience away from having a totally different belief about how the world works. Kind of reminds me of the adage I heard once, everything in life is black or white until it impacts someone you love. And that's had a profound impact on me, and I think a lot of people would soften if they actually internalized both of these. Riff on the learnings that took you to understand the agility, the growth mindset you have built in yourself that really you're trying to convey to others in the book.
Yeah, I mean, you hit the nail on the head. I think that if we all did a better job of looking back, of taking stock of what we've gone through, especially over the last 5 years, I don't know a single person that hasn't been profoundly affected by 2020 and everything that came after it. So if you slow down long enough to take stock of all that you've gone through, I think you will notice these moments where you came to a crossroads and something happened in your life that shifted your perspective. We probably have hundreds and hundreds of those experiences in our life if we're paying attention to them. And I have encountered so many moments in my life and my career where I met the right person at the right time, or maybe I walked through something in my business that was really difficult. Maybe I walked through something in my life that was really difficult, and it changed the way I saw the world. So if you just know that going into the next year, if you know that change is going to happen, life is going to life, it's going to show up in ways that you least expect it. And in the midst of those moments, ask, okay, well, how is this for me? How can I find something in this? How am I becoming stronger in this season because of what we're walking through right at this moment? Or how can I remain open? How can I keep my heart open and my eyes open to possibility, to meeting new people, in the hopes that I will be softened, in the hopes that I will be changed, in the hopes that I will be elevated to the next version of me. My favorite example of this as an entrepreneur, I might have even told you this story because I've told it so many times, is years ago I got to go to a business conference, and it was the highest level business conference I'd ever been to. And I was so excited to attend. And I saved up my money. It was a birthday gift to myself, and I bought a VIP ticket so I could sit in the front of the business conference. And I thought, man, I'm going to sit down here in the front of this business conference, and I'm going to meet the most amazing people. And this is, I'm ready, right? I show up on the first day and I'm ready. And a man comes and sits down next to me, and he literally looked like he just had left the beach. Like he had surfed in the morning, really shaggy hair. I'm not sure he had taken a shower. He was wearing a t-shirt and sweatpants. And these tickets, Scott, these are so expensive. And some inner part of me was like, oh my, what is going on? This cannot be the VIP entrepreneurs I was hoping that I would get to sit with. And as luck would have it, at one point in the conference that day, they said, find a partner and talk about, you're supposed to cast your vision for your business for the next year. And I had been trying, I'm going to make this up because I don't remember the exact figure, but I was trying to pass a revenue threshold in my business. I was trying to, let's say, get past $1 million. I'd never done $1 million in revenue in a year. And I was trying, and it was like my fourth year trying. And so, I said to this guy, this stranger, this surf bum, I said, I'm trying to get past $1 million, and my goal this year is to get to 1.2. And I tell him the whole thing. And he said, oh, okay. How much did you make last year? And I was like, I clutched my pearls. I could not believe this stranger had the audacity to ask me how much money I made in my business. And I said, oh, I think I did 750,000. And he was like, oh, that's great. And I said, well, how much did you make in your business last year? And he said, 18.2. And I was like, 18,000? And he was like, no, 18.2 million. And Scott, this maybe sounds like someone's listening to this and you're at a high level in your business and that number doesn't flip you upside down. I am telling you that I did not know that regular everyday people could have businesses that made that much money. And it was like an earthquake. Like everything about my perspective of business changed. Here, this guy who, by the way, did leave the beach, was living the best life and had a business that was doing the kind of revenue I literally couldn't even fathom. It changed how I saw the world. And because it changed how I saw the world, all of a sudden I thought, oh my gosh, I'm playing too small. So never underestimate the power of another person to change your perspective about what is possible for you. And also never judge a surfer. Never judge a book by his cover, especially when he looks like a surfer, because he could secretly be making millions of dollars in his business.
I was trying to guess who it was. I hope you were going to share the name. Okay, your current book is called What If You Were the Answer, and 26 other questions that might just change your life, This is going to be a book club extraordinary. Extraordinary book. Let's water ski across some of these questions. One of them is what you must let go of. And you share a couple of examples in the book. I need to let go of my dependence on alcohol as a coping mechanism. I need to let go of unfulfilling sex as a substitute for intimacy. I need to let go of this debilitating obsession with my parents' approval, or I might say, my leader's approval. I need to let go of these clothes as a fixation on a body I don't have anymore. I need to let go of worry about what other people will think if I come out. This was one of the first questions you asked. What must you let go? I'm guessing these are in some kind of sequenced order. I'm guessing you put some cards out and moved them around a little bit as a momentum builder, or maybe I'm wrong.
I did, and I didn't, to be honest. I wrote these questions as individual essays over the course of 4 years. And it was 4 years where I was walking through all kinds of huge life moments, going through a divorce and finding love again. I was navigating grief with my children. I was going through changes in my business because of the pandemic. And my therapy in a lot of ways is to write. And I didn't really know what I would do with them. I just knew that I wanted to kind of get my thoughts out. And I've been doing it so long that I think I'm sort of have programmed myself to look for what is happening in my life that might be helpful to others. So as I was writing, in no particular order, I started to realize that all of these things I was navigating would be helped by kind of unpacking them, getting down low, getting to what was really going on below the surface. And for me, the way to do that is through questions. So this is one of my favorite questions in life, and it is something we ask all the time as a family. I write about that we have a monthly dinner where we ask this question: what must you let go of in order to become the person you want to be? Not what should you let go of, but what must you let go of? And you read some ideas that I wrote down there just to give people thoughts on, okay, well, what are the things in my life that if I really want to get to the next level, I have to be real about what's holding me back. I love this idea that we become who we're meant to be, who we're called to be, who we are in our truest, purest form, not by adding to our lives, but by subtracting, by taking away anything that should not be there. And I want to encourage listeners to understand you don't have to make the move to remove the thing yet. You might not be ready to remove that element from your life. You might not be ready to give up the thing you know you need to give up. But just knowing what it is, I think, begins a process inside of us that starts to whisper and tap us on the shoulder and remind us of who we're called to be and what we need to let go of in order to get there.
Rachel, it's no secret I'm a raving fan of yours. I think you demonstrate courage in times when it would be easier not to. I think you have demonstrated transparency and vulnerability in times where maybe you didn't get a fair shake. I think you are, in a time of trolls and negativity and hate and vitriol, you are an energy infuser. And I am elated at the insights and success and questions that you're sharing in this book. I hope this book becomes the biggest bestseller in 2025. And to support that, I want to do a quick speed round across a couple of the questions.
Okay.
I'm going to pitch one of them to you, and I want you to give me two or three sentences. We'll move on. Another question is, what are you attracting? Speed round, go.
I am attracting flow. That is my intention right now, to do more things in flow and less things with force.
What would you be without fear is another one of the questions.
Happier, more joyful, a more open heart. I would have less anxiety. I work on my fear constantly, but I think human nature is it's still there. It's always this thing that we need to keep peeling back the layers on.
This was my second favorite chapter in the book. Are you the problem?
Absolutely.
Do me a favor. Will you riff on that concept? Answer it, but also riff on it in a broader context.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think yes is the answer for every single person. Everything in our lives is a mirror. On some level, it is a mirror of who we are, how we are behaving, how we are acting. And when we take responsibility for our relationships, when we take responsibility for more of the things in our life, when we take ownership of those things, you realize that in some ways you are the problem, and therefore that means you are also the solution. I think there's incredible power in realizing that you have control over the way you interact with other people.
Yeah.
That particular chapter was just about hoping, more people would do a deep dive and ask themselves, do we need to stop blaming others? Do we need to actually look in our own heart and in our own choices and take some ownership for the way things are working out?
Dr. Covey was a mentor, hero of mine, founded our company, one of the most quoted leadership authors of our generation. Of the many things he said, which frustrates the heck out of me, is he would say, when you think the problem is out there, therein lies the problem. And it takes a lot of maturity and self-awareness to own your share. Not over-own, but to own your share. What is it like to be in a relationship with you? What's it like to be raised by you? What's it like to live next door to you? What's it like to work on a project with you? I think if all of us showed a shred more self-awareness around what's it like to play pickleball with us, we might get invited back more often. Let's keep the speed round going. Do you play pickleball? You don't strike me as a pickleballer.
I don't. I play tennis, but I don't play pickleball.
See, I knew that's why we were such good friends. Okay. What are you afraid to admit?
What am I afraid to admit? This chapter actually was about parenting in particular, about the hardships of parenting and not feeling like we're allowed to say how hard it is. It is hard. It is hard. I have 4 kids, and some of them are thriving and some of them are going through a hard season, and it's never the same kid at the same time. So I feel like I am constantly, it's like whack-a-mole, like, oh, okay, on Friday we find out if Jackson got into his dream college, and also, this one's struggling with impulse control at school, and it's a lot. So I think, like a lot of people, it's a fear of, what if everyone knows that this isn't easy to do? What if everyone knows that this is a struggle at times? But in saying those words out loud, I am taking power away of the fear of not showing up authentically.
Rachel, I was privileged to receive an advance copy of the book and wasn't able to read all of it, but read 80% of it. At the very end of it, I decided to skip to the end just because I was interested. Is there like an appendix, or was there maybe, a tribute to someone? And all of a sudden I come across the last chapter, which is a bit of a bonus chapter, I might call it, because it's different than all the others. And all of a sudden I started reading it, and I'm thinking, oh, no, everyone should read the last chapter first. And then, let me just tell, of the 7 million copies of this book you're going to sell in 2025, everyone, you probably should read it in a book club. Guys, gals, everybody in between. You probably want to form a group. You probably want to get together for 26 weeks and have a Zoom call. But let me tell you, start with the last one first and then go to the front of it. I'm guessing I'm not the only person that had that idea. It's a family-owned podcast, if you will, so I'm not going to quote the actual title. But
yes,
I mean,
you can bleep it.
You actually are extraordinarily, I cried. I teared up, I had to set it down. Your former husband, Dave, was a friend of mine, and you address very respectfully and briefly an encounter you have in his home after his tragic passing. You talk about a personal experience you had with a miscarriage when you were single with a new boyfriend. And I put the book down because I haven't talked about this publicly, but my wife and I, Stephanie, are privileged to have 3 sons. I say privileged because I have to remind myself of that. Our boys are 10, 12, and 14. My wife, Stephanie, had a miscarriage in the middle there. And on the way home from the hospital, I took her to a restaurant for lunch to fix it, to solve it, to check it off. It's one of my biggest regrets in life is I grossly was ill-equipped and incapable of understanding the emotional trauma and travesty that my wife Stephanie experienced. I'm a guy. I like to solve problems. Like you, I contextualize and I move on fast. I'll revisit it, but I move on fast, right? I'm the guy you want to hire to evacuate a burning building, not give an eulogy. You're the same. Would you do our listeners a courage? Would you speak to all of the women and their partners and their husbands about what it's like to experience the loss of a miscarriage? You write about it in the book, because I handled it all wrong. And I want men or supporting family and friends to hear from you what they should hear from you.
Yeah, I think I did not experience this until later in life. So I have 4 kids and very unexpectedly found out that I was pregnant with my 5th. And I had girlfriends and family members who had gone through this process. It's a very common thing to happen. But what I could not have understood was the grief that I would feel and how long it would last and how devastating that was. And I know that every single person processes that in different ways. But for me, I wasn't just going through the physical loss or what happens hormonally in your body or all of the confusion. It wasn't just that. I was also mourning the life that I could envision, because I have 4 children and I know, yes, they are hard and they drive me crazy, and they are also the greatest thing in my life. So I was mourning a whole journey. I was mourning this baby with us on Christmas morning. I was mourning, what she would be like as a toddler. I was mourning what she would be like as a 5-year-old, and it just decimated me. I just could not get over it. I don't know another way to say it. And I've heard so many girlfriends have told me this, that everyone is sort of looking at you going, it's been 2 months. It's been 3 months. It's been 6 months. Like, why are you still upset about this? And to just be graceful with you, you are not the only dude who ever tried to fix the situation. And I think there's something really beautiful about trying your best to support your partner, even if you don't have the right tools to do it, because nobody can know how to handle that until you're inside of it. And it was a very long journey for me. I did not get over it quickly. And I still, to this day, and for the rest of my life, will think about how old she would be today. And when we celebrate Christmas, I'll think about the fact that she is not with us. And I, feel her spirit, and I just know that it wasn't meant to be, but it still is something that makes my heart hurt. And for anybody who needs to hear it, whether your loss was 2 months ago or 20 years ago, that you are allowed to process your grief in whatever way you need to. We, especially if we are caretakers, we tend to rush to, quote, being okay, because that makes everyone else around us feel safe. If mama's okay, then everybody else feels safe. And yes, as leaders and as parents, we do have to be strong for the people that are in our care. Absolutely. But to yourself, to your trusted circle, to your therapist, to your church community, to your partner, you are allowed to not be okay for the people who are meant to hold space for you. And I think if we can just allow ourselves to feel and process at a pace that makes sense to us, we will be able to move through it faster than we imagine, but it still may be longer than everyone else would prefer. I guess it's just worth saying that the grief of losing a baby is it's still grief. And I know nobody else could carry it or see it, or they didn't maybe have the vision that you had, but you're allowed to feel about that however you need to.
And the loss of this pregnancy came on the heels of the pandemic, which rocked everybody's world differently, right? Mm-hmm. Came on the implosion of what was a meteoric business for you, and unrelatable public relation challenges that you went through. It came on the heels of the tragic death of the father of your 4 children and your former husband. Came on the heels of the end of your marriage. I mean, you girl, you've had your share. You've had your share.
It's been a really challenging is not enough of a word. It's been a really challenging.
It has been. I can't comprehend. Here's how I'd like to end. I was going to invite you to teach us a lesson, but I'm not, because in the spirit of the book, you're not teaching lessons. You're posing questions. Yes. So for someone who had an unrelatably meteoric rise, brand, influence, income, followership, fame, the creation of business opportunity, I'll never forget sitting in your office in Austin, and I asked you why, what the vision was. And I don't know if you remember what you said to me, but it was just you and I. The door was closed in your office, and I asked you, what's going on? What are you planning to do? And you said to me, opportunity creation. I want to create jobs. I want to create opportunities for as many people as possible. And you painted the vision for what your company looked like. Obviously, the world had other plans for that. What is the question you want everyone to leave with right now when they have perhaps faced or will face the types of calamities that you have experienced in the last, say, 5 years? And here you are, in spite of it all, and I called it 7 million copies sold in 2025. What is the question you want everyone to ask themselves when they stop listening to us in 2 minutes?
Yeah, my intuition tells me to ask, how does it get better? How does it get better? That is a beautiful prayer. That is something to ask your inner wisdom. That is something to ask your guardian angels, God, the universe, whatever you believe in. How does it get better? Because we find what we look for. We attract what we focus on. And if you ask whatever higher power you are aware of, can you show me? God, can you show me how this gets better? Can you show me what's working? Can you show me where to put my energy? Can you show me? You will be guided. You will be led. I truly, with every ounce of my being, believe this. But you have to focus on it. And if you are walking through a hard season, if you are you're feeling stuck, you're feeling challenged, you're having a hard time getting up off the floor, or you're going through something awful, it's the simplest, easiest prayer. Can you show me something good? Can you show me how this gets better? And you use that as breadcrumbs to take you down this trail until you get far enough to start moving on your own steam again.
And when you're sliding down the bathroom wall, it might be the beginning, not the end. #1 New York Times bestselling author and phenom and friend, Rachel Hollis. What if you are the answer? And 26 other questions that just might change your life. Thanks for joining us today. You're a class act.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Scott.
And we'll see you back here next week for a new conversation on leadership.